Moshi Moshi.
Hello,
I'm Seb Ramsbotham,
and I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
and we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
And right now we're tucked into our little house.
Yeah, it's such a cozy day. It's kind of rainy outside.
Yeah, it's actually pretty gross outside, but thankfully we are back home after a long weekend.
Camping trip.
Yeah.
This week, or today, we're talking about this past weekend, which we'll be talking about our cycling and camping trip in Wakayama Prefecture, the Kumano Kodo pilgrimage trail, getting a lift from a construction worker, three-legged crows, and yogurt lids inspired by leaves.
Yeah. So it was a really nice weekend. I don't know if we had mentioned in a previous episode, I know we talked about we were going to potentially go on like a long trip.
I think
over
we
the
were
long
vague
weekend.
because we had still not decided yet where we were going to go.
Yeah, we had kind of made a plan. So I made a plan. Actually, I'd done like a few different things. My original idea was, we'll go to Shikoku and we'll ride around in Shikoku. And then I realized, like, well, I don't know if that would really work. And then I was like, well, it'd be fun to go see Shimane Prefecture. And there's a bunch of really pretty stuff like down that way.
It's funny because there's nothing to like see in Shimane Prefecture necessarily, but we were going to go down because there's not really anything specific to see, to kind of like explore and get like some new bike roads and stumble upon stuff, I guess.
Yeah,
there
I
is a
think
shrine over there that's really important, isn't there?
Yeah, I can't remember if it's actually in Shimane Prefecture, but there's Matsue is down there, and it has one of the original castles. And then also there is, I think it's is it Izu shrine? There's a really important shrine down there. So there's like really cool stuff to see, and yeah, it's a very low populated prefecture, and it's fairly remote, so not a lot of people go to Shimane. So I thought, that would be fun. But then, kind of on a whim, I read an article about Wakayama and about how it's the capital of persimmons. It's like
I do love persimmons.
Yeah, they produce the most persimmons. So then I was thinking, well, we could go to Wakayama, and the article I saw had this like really beautiful photo of, they do this thing where they skewer persimmons and then they wrap them together and they hang them out to dry.
And sounds kind of brutal.
Well, it's the
but
thing
I know
where,
it's just like stringing up fruit. But
well, you bought one last year. It's the thing.
Did?
Yeah, it's on the stick and it's got the persimmons.
Oh, yeah.
It's the New Year's decoration.
I thought it was edible, but what I bought was just a decoration. So
Yeah.
I went to like try to eat it, and I was like, this seems like plastic.
Yeah.
And it was just very old.
Yeah, so they make those in Wakayama, and I think it's supposed to represent the sword, maybe. So they're the three Japanese artifacts. And I think maybe the persimmons on the stick represent the sword. Might be wrong. Anyway, I saw this article, and I kind of like shifted my plan. I was like, well, what if we go to Wakayama? And my original intent was to see this village where they hang these persimmons, because it's supposed to be beautiful, and they're supposed to be like, it's supposed to be very orange because there are persimmons everywhere.
And it's the season. And if you're not super familiar with Japan geography yet, the Wakayama Prefecture, there's a city, Wakayama, but it's also the name of a prefecture that's on the Kii Peninsula, which is just south of Osaka. Like if you go to Kyoto, farther down is Osaka, farther down is Wakayama and that peninsula.
Yeah, and so that was like my original intent, and then that kind of like turned into this. Well, then I was like looking around, and I was looking at cool campsites because I knew we wanted to go camping.
Yeah.
So it kind of evolved, and we actually didn't even go near the town where they hang the persimmons.
Yeah. Because we found other fun things to do instead. And I think you also said that the persimmon town was not all it was cracked up to be. Like the photo is really beautiful, but it was kind of, that's all it is. It's just one orchard.
Yeah, I think it's just one photo. If you stand in a certain spot, you can take a really, like the article made it sound like the whole valley is filled with like orange.
Which I guess that's most of marketing. Like you just take a photo in a nice shot, and that's, I don't know.
But essentially
I got us to go there.
Yeah, I went on Google Maps and I found like the exact location where they had taken the photo, and it's like a spot on Google Maps you can click on, and a lot of the reviews for the place were kind of like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but like nothing to travel for, which is really what we travel for, a lot of things that's nothing to travel for. But then in researching Wakayama, I saw a bunch of other really cool stuff where I was like, well, actually that's more interesting.
That's something to travel for.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, and the reason we were able to do this long weekend, it was conveniently timed around Thanksgiving, but of course only Americans celebrate Thanksgiving, so you had time off school, but it was for Japanese Labor Day or something.
Well, it's Japanese Thanksgiving, but it's convenient. Like, so Japanese Thanksgiving is every year on November 23rd. Which
is it actually, because in America, Thanksgiving is like, oh, the Native Americans and the
yeah, so theirs
settlers
is more, I was reading about it.
We're apparently friendly.
Yeah, theirs is more of like a harvest festival. Apparently dating back some, and it used to have a different name, but dating back, of course, like some like thousands of years, there was a harvest festival that coincided around this time. And apparently after, World War II and some modernization of Japan and the whole like occupation of Japan, it was apparently a very like Shinto holiday.
Oh,
and so
to
I guess
thanks
Americans, Shintoism during World War II kind of became the state religion, and it was like really kind of inspiring the war. So I think Americans were like, you gotta cut out the Shinto, you gotta stop it. So they changed the name of the holiday, and it became Japanese Thanksgiving. And sometimes you'll see it listed as Japanese Labor Thanksgiving Day. But essentially it's like a harvest festival. I don't think they do anything for it now to celebrate, but traditionally you celebrated a good harvest. So kind of similar to
you
American
would have had like
Thanksgiving.
A big meal or something maybe.
Maybe, yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the origins of American Thanksgiving, being all that nice and shiny the way that we used to do in elementary school, like have all the skits where it was like, and then everyone was best friends. Like, I don't know about that, but I do like the idea of giving thanks and being grateful. So it is a very nice, cozy holiday.
And since Japanese Thanksgiving is always on the 23rd, it just so happened to be the 23rd was the third Thursday or whatever, so it actually was the exact same day as American Thanksgiving, which I guess happens every now and then with the way the calendar works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had time off, so I took Friday and Monday off to give us a long weekend.
Like a 5-day weekend. It's like a week. It was great.
Yeah.
And we needed it because the drive from Ishikawa down, you basically have to cross the whole island to get to like the opposite peninsula from one peninsula to the other.
We went from the Sea of Japan coast to the Pacific.
Yeah.
So. And
it was like a 7-hour drive, which we broke up both times. We broke up, like we would drive 3 hours, spend the night at the hotel, and then drive the rest of the way. But we got to bring our tent this time, so we didn't have to spend so much money on hotels.
Yeah, so when we were back in the U.S., we knew we wanted to go camping, so we were like, well, we should take our tent. And we had our sleeping bags over here already, but we didn't bring our tent.
Yeah.
So,
but actually that was good because I needed the sleeping bags last winter to stay warm. So tell me about how you found this random camping site. We were in Kawayu Onsen. It's not that random, but it wasn't
a little random.
It was kind of in the center-ish of the peninsula, because one of the days we rode to Shingu, which we'll talk about, and the other day we rode to Shirihama.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like I find everything just scrolling Google Maps, just looking.
Just got a lot of time to kill.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, people that do a lot of Googling will know. And you learn this in school. I learned at some point, how to like modify your keywords to find what you're looking for.
That's true.
Like sometimes in Japan, if you're searching for campsite, nothing comes up. If you search for like campground, nothing comes up. But sometimes they like prefer one or the other, like campsite versus campground. Or if you just do camp. I
guess sometimes you have to search for things in Japanese too.
Like English sometimes you have to use like katakana. But basically just the combination of using a lot of keywords and kind of like scrolling around and looking for a campground is how I found this place. And then it just happened to be in Kawayu Onsen, which sounded really cool. So
yeah,
I was like,
it's cool because so the campsite is right next to this river, and we didn't get to do this because it was cold and also because the sun sets at like 4:30, so when we finished our ride we were like racing the sun both days. But if you come in the summer, you can actually just bring a shovel and dig in the river and you'll hit the hot onsen water, and you can make your own bath, like warm water bath right there in the river, which sounds like divine. I want to do that, but it was it was not freezing, but it got down to around freezing, where it was like, uncomfortable to be out without gloves on, kind of. Not really a temperature you would want to be like digging around in a riverbed in.
Yeah.
But in the summer, we should come back.
Yeah, and we also didn't have a shovel. So
That's true.
That was a really big
I was just going to get in there with
deterrent.
my hands.
I know, I think that was a bad idea.
Well, we didn't do that, so.
Yeah. And he was like, I'm going to get in that river right now. But yeah, that was like really neat. And there's some other really cool stuff in that area. So I didn't really know that we were camping next to one of the grand shrines that's along the Kumano Kodo, which we'll talk about. That we were also right next to this little onsen called Yunomine Onsen.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go. We didn't end up going, even though we were like a kilometer away. But we saw tons of other really cool stuff, so I can't really complain.
Yeah,
and plus,
there's just so much to see.
Yeah, Kawayu Onsen was really cool. But yeah, that was basically it. I found the campsite, and then from the campsite I planned like 4 or 5 bike routes, and then tried to decide which ones would be more fun to do.
Which was actually really nice, because in previous bike trips we've talked about, we've either like brought our own stuff with us, or we've driven and stopped somewhere new each night. It was really nice to just have one spot, and each day we would do a loop from that spot, like kind of a clover leaf thing to explore the area. Yeah. I really liked that.
Yeah, and that was kind of my like intent, I guess, because I thought it would be fun. Because originally with the Shimane trip, it would have been a little rushed, because we would have been driving, riding, and setting up and breaking down the tent like every single day. We would have seen a ton of stuff, but
it would have probably been overwhelming.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense. I was like, yeah, I don't know if that would actually be like.
Yeah.
It would have been fun, but yeah, I was looking for something where we could have like a little base and do some riding from there.
And we didn't wilderness camp, like, by any means. We definitely car camped. But when we set up a tent, but our car was right next to us, and the campground had sinks, toilets. Didn't have a shower, but we could just walk to the day bath.
Yeah, the public bath.
Yeah, so that was fine.
Yeah, it was kind of what I think of, like, if you're a parent and you have young kids and you want to go camping, that the Japanese idea of camping is perfect for that.
Yeah. Most
of the time, I've been looking at a lot of campsites on Google, and I have rarely seen like a true like wild campsite.
Because I feel like, why would you have a campsite and pay at that point? Like, at that point, just walk into the woods and put it up wherever you feel like.
Yeah, which I think some people do. And I think that, I don't know if it's, in like some European countries, it's kind of like a quasi-legal gray zone where people will tell you, yeah, you can go wild camping and it's totally fine. But really, like, local laws are kind of not down for that.
Yeah.
I think in Japan it might be a little bit of the same. Like, I think you can kind of get away with it because some places are so remote and people don't really
Yeah, they wouldn't notice that you're there.
But I don't know if it's allowed.
Yeah.
But
I don't see or hear about a lot of people just wild camping. But, I mean, that doesn't really say much. We haven't been here that long.
I've heard about it a little bit with bike races. Like, one of the online like resources I use for talking to people about like cycling in Japan. For a bike race, there were a few people that were talking about, oh yeah, you can park in this parking lot and just put your tent next to your car and stuff like that. So,
well, the car camping at this campground was really fascinating because people would go like all out. Like, they would bring these huge house-sized tents, and there were several that had fire, like they had chimneys in the tent. Like, they were a type of tent where you could build a fire inside.
It was basically like a yurt.
Yeah.
Like a modern lightweight yurt.
Yeah, people were like chopping wood, bringing it into the tent. People would have
kitchens.
whole setups, like to barbecue outside, and it was really impressive. But felt like, to me, a lot of bring so much stuff with you and take so much time to set up, but then you are comfortable. I don't know.
I think that camping in Japan is less about the minimalism and more about spending time closer to nature, you know? Like, you still bring all the comforts of home. Yeah, it's kind of like you want to have nature in your living room. So you bring your living room out into nature, which is totally fine and is very comfortable. But I think from my, like, collegiate idea of camping and, like, what we used to do in the mountains back home, it's very different.
We did live surrounded by national forests and back home in America, so that was a little different. But there are opportunities to really get out there and be like one with nature.
I think
For example, the Kumano Kodo experience. Yeah. So Zeb mentioned earlier the Kumano Kodo, which is it's an ancient pilgrimage route. There's actually several routes, but it winds through the mountains of the Kii Peninsula.
Which I think are just the Kii Mountains.
Yeah, the Kii Mountains. So not only Wakayama, but Nara, a little bit of Osaka and Mie prefectures. And according to the website, it has been walked by pilgrims on their quest for enlightenment for over a millennium. And it is cool that it's...
Is that 1,000 years?
I don't know.
Millennium?
I guess so. I don't know.
Because wasn't the year 2000 the new millennium?
I guess. I don't know who they asked, to find that date.
They've been surveying for 1,000 years.
Yeah. But anyway, it's only one of 2 recognized World Heritage Site pilgrimage routes. The only other one is the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is really cool. I didn't realize that there were only those 2 that were... Of course, there's other trails and other pilgrimage opportunities, but those are the only 2 recognized by the with World Heritage status.
This kind of goes back to one of our previous episodes.
Well, Zeb doesn't like the designation.
We just talked about World Heritage stuff, and even on our drive, we kept seeing, here's the World Heritage boulder. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, everything's special.
I do think the Kumano Kodo is super cool,
yeah.
And it is really neat, but I guess for me, it doesn't do a lot to say it's one of 2 World Heritage, because then it makes me think about, well, how do you define a pilgrimage?
Yeah.
And, what were, Native Americans, the American Indians doing, in North America? Was that technically a pilgrimage? I guess not.
In my head, I'm thinking a pilgrimage by kind of their definition of it is that it has to have a spiritual element of it. You're not just exploring and going on a personal journey. It's all of that and all of the hard parts of being outside, plus you're trying to, reach enlightenment in air quotes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because the Kumano Kodo, it links all these shrines, so that's the Shinto aspect, but then the Camino de Santiago links churches, so it's got the Christianity aspect. So I guess it doesn't matter what God you're trying to reach.
Well, no. I mean, it's just a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting, though, to me. But on this one, you can collect stamps, which I do love collecting little things like that.
You know what should be a World Heritage pilgrimage? The Mayflower.
The Mayflower?
Yeah, when the Pilgrims came from England.
Why?
To Plymouth Rock.
That was an awful one. They came
Just
over
kidding.
and they killed everybody.
Then you can just have a boat.
That one doesn't have any spiritual aspects to it.
Those dudes were spiritual.
Oh.
They left England because they were being persecuted.
I don't know.
So they needed to escape.
I think your dry humor is too dry.
Okay, sorry.
But there's multiple routes that you can choose on the Kumano Kodo, and typically there's one that's 4 to 6 days long, and if you are hiking 14 to 21 kilometers, but they have ones where you could just go for a day hike and go around and see a little shrine or do just a couple days.
And you were never really that far from a road, because even on our bike
I guess
ride,
that's true, yeah.
Well, on our bike ride, we would see a lot of parking lots that, would say the Kumano Kodo is 400 meters right there. Yeah. So you could do a lot of day hiking if you wanted to, in that area.
That's
and just
true.
Drive to different parking lots and hike different sections. I guess kind of like the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
You could do section hikes instead of doing a through hike.
I didn't realize, because, I was thinking about the Appalachian Trail because we lived very close to it in North Carolina. There is only one route. You just follow the white blazes, and if you're not on the trail, you're not on the trail. But the Kumano Kodo, it's, if you look at the map, there's 5 at least different routes, and they're not, similar routes.
Yeah, some are, super long, too.
No, they're, out from they're like a star, radiating out from points.
I was just thinking the one that goes all the way up to Ise.
Yeah.
That would take you weeks versus these. It was 4 days. But yeah, it was really fascinating. It just made me wonder. I mean, I also assume the Camino de Santiago just has one route. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think you either go one direction or you go the other direction.
I think you can also take bikes on the Camino de Santiago.
And horses too. I think.
But you can't on the Kumano Kodo. It's very much footpath only. Mm-mm. And what is really random is while we were in this area, a friend of a friend was also in the area, hiking the Kumano Kodo and staying at the same campsite we were at, which is so random because it's 7 hours from our house and he flew on a plane to get here. So what are the odds? But he said So he's a cyclist. He's a pretty competitive, very fit guy. But he said it was the most humbling thing he's ever done and the lowest physical point he's ever been at in his life.
There are a few caveats to that.
There are very many caveats.
Like he was fasting.
Yeah.
So he hadn't eaten in days.
And he also had never camped.
And he was wearing minimalist shoes.
Yeah.
So like no support.
So a lot of decisions that I would not
have. And he doesn't walk normally.
It was really impressive that he did finish
it was really
what
cool.
he set out to do. But yeah, it was just interesting to hear from someone who I would consider to be an athlete saying that it was the most humbling thing he's ever done.
Yeah, and we would see sometimes we'd be coming back from a bike ride or be hanging out in the campsite, and you could see the road that I think, a lot of people walked in on.
People were just blasted.
Yeah, you'd see people just like cracked, like they couldn't like hold their heads up straight.
Yeah, it looked really hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on in the woods, but it must be humbling.
Yeah,
What's the most humbling thing you've ever done?
Yeah. It's just, I would be curious now. It makes me want to do it.
What's the most humbling thing you've ever done?
Oh, the most humbling thing I've ever done?
Yeah.
I've never been humbled. Ever in my life.
Yeah, clearly. I don't know. I would have to think about that to like separate biking,
Yeah, if I took cycling out of the element, I mean, I don't know.
Things outside are always very humbling to me. Like
Yeah.
I have a lot of things come up in my head where it's been like, besides biking, like a hiking trip or camping or like being out in the elements. Nature is very humbling.
I would think outside of cycling too, it would be, maybe like a hike I've done. So I did the Westweg in Germany, which was like a 9-day hike through the Black Forest. It's pretty humbling. But yeah, I haven't done something that totally crushed me, Like I'm trying to think about, have I ever done anything that just really wanted to quit? I don't know.
I mean, if I take out cycling trips or cycling things, that I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Maybe one day we'll do the Kumano Kodo and we'll say, man, that was...
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, email us your most humbling stories.
Or if you've done the Kumano Kodo, let us know, like what...
Yeah, how bad is it?
Specifically about it. Because we almost did it...
we didn't almost do it, but we thought about doing it.
Well, during the COVID years, we had booked a ticket to come to Japan, but then Japan was still closed, so we didn't get to come. But one of the things we were going to do on that trip was the Kumano Kodo. Maybe it saved our marriage, not...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but pretty fascinating.
At the center of this area, though, like despite there being all these different routes, there's 3 main shrines in the Kumano area: the Hangu Taisha, the Hayatama Taisha, and the Nachi Taisha, and they're collectively known as the Kumano Sanzan. But we actually only saw 2 of the 3. Nachi has this really pretty waterfall if you look it up, and it's a waterfall that's right next to this bright red pagoda, and the pictures are really pretty.
Yeah, I feel like if you see a photo from the Kumano Kodo, it's probably a picture of this, because there's like a pagoda and then the waterfall, and it's just so beautiful.
We did get to see the Hangu Taisha and the Hayatama Taisha, though, in Shingu, and then in, like, near the onsen we were staying at, actually. The Kawayu Onsen is really close to the Hangu Taisha. Because
we were essentially staying in Hangu, was like kind of the little district that was technically part of Tanabe City, which if you look on the map, you're like, how is that possible? Because Tanabe is like all the way at the coast.
Yeah.
We were really close to Hangu Taisha.
And I didn't realize, I was reading the signs when we were visiting the shrines, and it was talking about the Kumano faith as a whole, and I didn't realize that it started, or that it's kind of its own thing aside from Shintoism. Like, it's a more specific thing. And it's rooted in the worship of the natural environment, like Shintoism, but then it has kind of a link with Buddhism. And so, to quote Wikipedia, which is not, the best citation, but it says that the religious significance of the Kumano region goes back to prehistoric times and therefore predates all modern religions in Japan, and each shrine initially had its own separate form of nature worship. And then in the 10th century, under the influence of Buddhism, all 3 of those nature worship forms were together as the 3 deities of Kumano. And then, yeah, that's because at that time, Japanese kami, so like gods in the Shinto belief, were then believed to be emanations of different Buddhas in the Hanji Sujaku theory. And so they were then associated with Buddhas. So it's like a little mix, maybe. nature and Buddha and
I guess like all things in Japan now, they kind of just take the bits and then
sometimes, yeah. But you also will see this three-legged crow symbol in all three of these shrines. And in the Kumano area, not just actually in the Kumano area, but Yatagarasu is a sacred crow. And it's said to be the messenger of the gods. And also that he lives inside the sun. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, apparently that it was, maybe like people think it might have started as a personification of sunspots. Like the crow lives in the sun. But either way, it also probably because the sun is such an important like symbol in like Asian mythology and religion.
Yeah, I mean, so much. Like, yeah.
But this three-legged crow, he will help guide lost travelers and guides to unknown lands. But then the significance of the three legs symbolizes a couple different things, like heaven, earth, and humanity. But then it also, in the Kumano faith, it's the three Kumano clans, Ui, Suzuki, and Inmoto. And then the Hongu Taisha Shrine specifically said that they show wisdom, benevolence, and valor. I don't know, maybe those are the three important
Maybe, but
values.
do you remember there was a little sign and it did have like a funny picture of, there was like the crow took on different like forms and each shrine has their own crow image that they use. They're all three-legged crows.
Yeah.
But each one of the three shrines has like a different kind of like little three-legged crow mascot that they focus on.
It's pretty cool. And
yeah, it's cool.
The crow's not limited to just this area, because in, I guess, older mythology about the beginning of Japan, Yatagarasu led Jimmu, the first emperor of Japan, who he's kind of like a quasi-mythological figure.
Myth. Yeah.
But
they think the first, like, it's something like the first 10 emperors of Japan are mythological people. Like, they weren't.
They might have been based on, I mean, somebody had to make it here, so. But yeah, he was led by the three-legged crow to establish the country. And that was when the first capital was in Nara, before Kyoto, before Tokyo. But yeah, Yatagarasu led him there through the mountains.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. And the sign also mentioned that three-legged crows or that crows are, you know, of important symbol in other cultures too. Like Scandinavia, there's birds on Ojin's shoulders. One is thought and the other is memory. And then in ancient Greece, the crow is the symbol of Apollo. So yeah.
Yeah.
Crows
I like
special
crows.
birds.
They're super cool. And like, you know, ravens in particular too. I feel like corvids or whatever they're called, they have a lot of, I don't know, significance and what are they, metropolitan.
Oh.
Isn't that the thing where they're spread around the entire globe?
Oh, like they
rats?
could live anywhere?
Yeah. So they're kind of everywhere.
I never thought about that.
Everyone kind of knows what a crow is.
Yeah, that's true.
So they have a lot of, I think, significance. And they're just really cool animals. Mostly because of how smart they are. And they're just fun to look at. I'm just a big fan of crows.
I like to look at those crows.
Yeah, they're just neat.
Well,
kind of comforting.
The main point of the trip was biking. All the shrines were like an added cool thing. But what was the biking like? The whole reason we went.
The biking was super nice.
Yeah.
I was really surprised. I guess I didn't have any expectations, but most of the places we've been in Japan have felt, I don't want to like make it sound bad, but most of the places we've been in Japan kind of feel like anywhere else in Japan.
Like similar.
To a certain extent. Yeah, like Japanese scenery is very, I don't know, very kind of like uniform.
I mean, to be fair, we've never biked off of the main Hongu Island. But yeah, a lot of...
Hongu Island?
Honshu, sorry. The Hongu Shrine, the Hongu Island, the Honshu Island.
But even when we went to Hokkaido, we didn't do any cycling there, but kind of in Hokkaido, I don't know, things kind of look similar, although Hokkaido had so much snow, so it looked a little different. But yeah, so this was one of the first places where I felt like the scenery really did have a pretty strong, it still looked very similar, but there are elements that made me feel like we were somewhere new. Like I did kind of keep thinking, oh, it reminded me a lot of Mallorca.
Yeah, there were parts that felt like Spain. Yeah,
kind of riding in like the south of, I guess kind of close to Nice, and then riding on Mallorca, like those two areas, especially with like those super narrow roads, lack of guardrails.
Yeah. So on Friday, we did our biggest ride, and it was 90-something miles from the middle of the peninsula-ish to the west coast of the peninsula in Shirayama. And I couldn't believe at first how beautiful and, like, lush the forests were, like, green and mossy. And, like, we followed this creek on a gravel road, and I felt like I was in, you know, Princess Mononoke, the Ghibli movie. I felt like I was in that kind of, like, lush forest. But then by the time we got to the coast, I was all of a sudden, like, on a beach town.
Yeah,
and
like a
the
little
water,
paradise.
like a white sand, blue water beach
Yeah.
town. It was completely different. And I couldn't believe that both of those sceneries were in the same ride in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long ride, but
Yeah.
it was, like, feasible.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Wakayama.
And this was maybe the first place in Japan where I felt it really did feel... So not the first place. The first place was when we were hiking our bikes through the woods.
In Nanto?
In Nanto.
Yeah.
That felt really remote.
Very rugged. Very, like, out there.
Yeah, but then this was the second time in Japan where I felt like, oh yeah, this is actually really remote. Like,
yeah. There were a couple times where I was like, we better not, you know, come up on a closed road because it would be really hard to turn around or to find, like, help or a ride out. Because we would be on gravel, like, rough gravel, where I wouldn't drive a car on that kind of gravel for, like, miles. And you would get to a road intersection, you'd be like, all right, well, we'll just make it to this road intersection and surely it'll connect here to pavement. And it was like an intersection of gravel roads, and you're just in these deep forest roads, which was very beautiful. But once we actually, like, made it through and the loop connected, I was like, oh, thank goodness, like, that was really nice, and I would do it again. But there was a point, like, 75% of the way through where I was like, I don't want to go back all of that.
Yeah,
if
Annie
it
would
doesn't
keep mentioning, like, I don't know about this.
So often in Japan, we've come to a road that is paved and driven on that a landslide will happen, and you just can't pass.
Yeah.
And I was worried, like, oh, surely, like, out here in the woods, if a landslide happened, this would be on the bottom of the list to fix.
Yeah. It was pretty unique, too, because even here in Ishikawa, you can feel like you're super remote, but then there will still be, like, little clusters of houses or, you know, one random house. Mm-hmm. But this was definitely a time where we were, like, riding for so long, and when we finally saw a building again, it was kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, someone actually does live out here.
Maybe the road is, like, you can't go all the way through.
Yeah, so that was, like, a really fun feeling in Wakayama, and also just the scenery, kind of like what you were saying about being able to see the beach. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just really nice. I was definitely a huge fan.
There was one time where there was a U-turn sign.
Yeah, so this was a bit of a problem in our ride. So I planned the routes, and I looked for roads.
He does a very good job with route planning. I just show up and Zeb makes the plan.
Yeah, but I made sure to plan routes roads that had been ridden in the past, and in
the recent past.
Yeah, and I specifically did use Google Maps, and I would, like, you know, drop the little person and, like, do the little street view. Mm-hmm. And I assumed if, like, the Google car had made it through, mm-hmm. Things would be totally fine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did, like, drop it, like, a route. I didn't, of course, do, like, 93 miles of a route on Google Maps. So I missed the bits that were gravel. So I didn't know that they were gravel. And then also I learned during this trip that you can do the Kumano Kodo on Google Maps. Yeah. Someone hiked the trail with, like, I guess a backpack camera. And so on Google Maps, you can use Street View and you can look at the Kumano Kodo. So now I'm a little more aware of, okay, like, they're doing some weird things on Google Maps. Like, they're getting people out there hiking through the woods. Yeah. So just because you can see it on Street View
doesn't mean a car drove through.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a problem. And so I didn't know this road was gravel, but it was so beautiful and nice that I didn't really care.
Yeah.
The only thing that mattered was, and usually in Japan, they're pretty good about putting signs, like, towards the beginning of the road if you can't make it through, so you don't waste your time.
It's just that sometimes you can make it through. Like, sometimes the, like, part of the road is collapsed, but, like, you could walk on half of the road. Like, a car couldn't drive, but a bike is fine.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it truly is, like, the road is gone. Like, you can't do, and you don't know until you either like gamble, like, well, we'll just go see, or you turn around.
Yeah, so we had made it pretty far, and there had been no indication that the road was like closed or there was any issue or anything was wrong. And we were maybe like 10 miles into the ride, which wasn't really that far. But
it had taken us an hour.
Yeah, because it was gravel and we were on road bikes, we were being a little careful. And we make it all the way out there, and then, yeah, there's this sign that says, like,
please make a U-turn.
Yeah, I was like, please do a U-turn.
But there was a construction site, and there was a man that was actually there. And so we went over to him to ask him, is it okay? Like, how bad is it?
I was like, are bikes okay? And he was like, muri muri, like, you definitely cannot.
At first he was like, it's impossible. Like, do not go.
Yeah.
Like, turn around. But then he kind of, like, softened. I don't know if he just was like, well, yeah, I mean, I'll see.
Yeah, and he actually... Why. We talked to him for a little bit.
He told us, because our Japanese isn't great, and so he was like, okay, well, let me ask my boss, wait here. And he left, like, and he got in his truck, turned it around, and drove away. And we both were like, is that really what he said? Did he really say, like, wait here, I'll go ask?
I was confused because he said, like, kokomade, and then he said, I think, kite kudasai, which is, like, could be listen and ask, but he said, like, boss, like...
Either way, he drove away. We kind of understood
enough where we were like, okay.
He was gone, though, for, like, 15 minutes, and so... Which is, not a long amount of time, but it's long to drive somewhere to go ask. And then we were like, he's coming back, right? And so we did we were like, well, we'll just start biking up the road a bit, I guess, instead of just standing here. And then he finally did come down, and he was like, okay, the boss says it's okay. And we were like, really? Great. And then he was like, you have to get in my car, though. And we were like, oh. And so he put our bikes in the back of this big construction truck, and we got into the cab with him.
Yeah.
And I was like, great, okay. And then we drove for like a while, like probably 10 minutes just up the mountain, which I was pleased with because we were cutting all this like elevation off, and I was like, great, because we had lost so much time. We didn't have time to do 90 gravel miles. Especially,
no, but I knew it wasn't all gravel.
Yeah, well, we didn't know how much gravel there was.
So this whole point, I was like pretty okay with everything. I think Annie was having a little bit of a...
I wasn't having a crisis, but I was like, all right. Close. Well, I was like, if there's so much construction on this road, like say we get through this part, what about the rest of it? And then we can't come back if we're getting shuttled. So anyway, I was like, all right, well, we'll see. And he drove us all the way up there, and then he parks, and then he's like, okay, from here we'll walk. And so we walked behind him through this construction site, and yeah, the side of the mountain had, I guess, just collapsed, and they were rebuilding the side of the mountain. There were people like on ropes, like being held up so that they could drill things into the wall.
Well, they were also doing the thing that if you come to Japan, you'll see it often in nature. Like you'll be in the middle of nowhere and you're like, there's no one out here. And then there will just be a concrete wall.
Yeah.
They do this thing where it almost looks like a waffle, and it's on the side of the mountain. And then they do the concrete that you can like spray. And then they just like spray it onto the mountain. Mm-hmm. And so they make...
It's like armoring the side of the wall.
Yeah, trying to prevent like landslides and stuff. So that's what they were doing, which was fascinating because this was like pretty, like, who uses this road to the point where they're spending, I don't know how many millions of dollars rebuilding a mountain to open it.
It's pretty impressive.
But then the fact that, so they let us go through the construction site, which was like a really funny experience because everyone was kind of like staring at us. Come from? And they were also probably thinking, like, where are you going?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then we made it through the construction site and there was a bridge and it was like totally closed, like massive sandbags, like tons of like ropes and signage. Mm-hmm. But at this point we're like, well, we made it here, so we can't turn back. Hop over the bridge.
And they said like, okay, from here, cross the bridge and go left, right? And we were like, yep, we're going left. And so we went left, but the road was it was paved, but it was in bad shape. Like there was, it had not been driven on recently.
Yeah, clearly had no cars, and there were spots where you could tell like the land was kind of collapsing because it had holes in the asphalt.
So in my head, we're like not out of the woods yet, like literally and figuratively.
Yeah, so we make it all the way up the climb, and then there's a tunnel, and then the tunnel is also under construction, which I was like blown away by. They had like a bunch of dudes in there, and they were like rebuilding the tunnel.
I guess it's the perfect time if one half of the road is closed, because the way they rebuild the tunnel, they have to drive into it and then put scaffolding up so that they can paint the top. Mm-hmm. So you can't, I mean, they blocked the tunnel basically. Yeah. It was just enough space that you could like kind of walk, like scoot around the side of the scaffolding.
And it was so funny because the first guy, when we came through, he pulled the like tarps aside and stuff so we could walk across.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh yeah, right this way."
And yeah, we were like, "What? Like, what is going on?" It was a pretty surreal experience.
They must have radioed the people in the tunnel and been like, "All right, there's some crazy cyclists coming up here. Just let them pass. Like whatever." Yeah. Because they weren't as shocked as I would have been if I had been like, I'm spray painting the roof of a tunnel in the middle of the woods, and then some like cyclist came up on a closed road. I would have been like, whoa.
Yeah, like what are you doing out
like,
here?
why are you here? But
yeah.
They were just kind of like, okay. This one guy was smoking a cigarette. He was like, sure, over here.
It's probably pretty dangerous.
Yeah, in a tunnel.
A bunch of fumes building up in there.
Either way, we made it through.
We made it through, and then we just had like a really long descent on the other side, which is just fascinating that they're. I guess I always
at
think
this
about
point it
this
was paved
in Japan, but yeah, it was paved. But just so fascinating that they're doing all that work to rebuild that stretch of road so that people could drive through it. Which I feel like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I was grateful.
Me
it's
too.
Beautiful.
Yeah, super beautiful. It's one of my favorite roads I've ever ridden.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a bit of an experience.
I was so grateful that guy was like, yeah, let me ask my boss. Because he didn't have to do that. I mean, that took like 30 minutes to go up and ask him and then come back for us. And
I had a kind of feeling for them. They were probably just like...
I don't think they were doing that much for the day because he had just been standing down at the bottom.
I think he had just finished doing what he was doing because there was like a little tractor down there. I think he'd been driving around. And so I think they were just kind of... like, well, yeah, let's see what happens with these guys.
This will be fun.
Yeah.
But do you remember when the trucks passed and the guy who was driving us, they chatted for a second and he was like, all right, you can go. But like, he said something about like, what are you going to do up there? And our driver was like, Wakayama, do you remember? He was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He probably was talking about the tunnel. He was probably like, what are they going to do when they get to the tunnel though? And he was like, not my problem.
Yeah. I wish there was some way we could like know who those guys are and send them like a little message and just say thanks, we made it. Like, they're probably like looking for news stories about like dead foreigners out in the woods.
They probably just thought we were dumb.
Yeah, probably. But it was fascinating, and I think all the roads like were just really beautiful. Like the terrain was really good. Scenery was really good. Because then after all of that like wilderness experience, we made it to Shirahama, which was like a resort town.
Yeah, we were suddenly like on a beach resort. It was
it felt
really
like
cool.
Being in like Palma or some you know European resort town. That was maybe the least Japanese place I've been. You know,
I guess it felt the least like Japan.
Yeah, like everything kind of feels like Japan, but there I did kind of keep thinking, oh, this could be like a small European seaside resort area.
I mean, maybe that's what the other islands in Japan feel like.
Yeah, it could be.
So it was interesting. And then on Saturday we went to Shingu and we just followed the Kumano River, which was really beautiful and way more simple. And that was the day we saw the 2 shrines in Shingu. And then on Sunday we did this like 55-mile loop around the Nara and Wakayama border. That was our last ride in the area. And that was also beautiful, but like in a different way, because instead of following the river and going to the coast, because both days we had gone to either side of the peninsula and seen the Pacific on 2 sides. And then Sunday we just stayed inland and did like a woods loop. And we got on some rough gravel again. And that day there was no roads that were closed, but that gravel was not drivable in some parts. It was rougher terrain than the first day.
Yeah.
In my mind. So I was worried because I was like, well, on the first day, if there was that much construction going on a relatively passable gravel road, like this road might just end and then we'd have to like hike a bike up everything we just came down. But it ended up being fine, but that was the day that worried me the most, I guess. But it was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was a really nice day. And
it felt like Pisgah in
It did.
North
it had
Carolina.
like a very, the gravel roads there were, felt
because you were following these mountain creeks and sometimes the trees would clear and you could see the tops of the mountains and the leaves had been changing. And so there was some nice fall foliage and it was really peaceful. And
then,
it
was super nice.
All of a sudden it got it went from pavement to gravel to really rough gravel to like, okay, I guess we'll just kind of like we got to walk through a little bit of this stuff here. And then it slowly became more paved again. And when we saw a car, I was like, oh, thank goodness, because the car was coming towards us, which means that they probably had to have come from the way we were trying to get to.
Unless they had to do a U-turn, because the road was washed off the side of the mountain.
I just knew that there was no way that little car had come from what we had come from. So that's why I knew they weren't going back to it.
Maybe, yeah.
So...
But they were going towards what we had just come from.
Yeah, they were going to have to do a U-turn.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that ride was pretty fascinating. They were definitely the kind of rides that I'm so glad that I've done once, but maybe I wouldn't want to do. Like, if I lived in Wakayama, I wouldn't ride those roads super frequently.
Day, no.
Yeah.
It was like an adventure ride.
Yeah, but it was so pretty. So, yeah, I'm really glad that we'll went and did it.
We'll put pictures on our Rambling Ramsbothams Instagram.
Yeah. But yeah, I was very impressed by Wakayama. I had no real expectations for what it was going to be like down there, but yeah. I'm really glad we went.
Yeah, I'd like to go back. There's so much we didn't see. Like, I mean, we saw a lot of really pretty nature, but...
I mean, we didn't see Wakayama, the capital. We didn't see... Yeah. There's some other really good, like, coastal cities. We also didn't see the southern tip. Yeah. I did have a ride planned that went down there and then came back up. But it probably maybe would have been a little too... Yeah. Like, it was, like, a lot.
And we had to get up kind of early to start the rides because the sun sets at 4:30. But opposite of our summer trip, I like didn't want to get up early because it was so cold. So it was hard to get up early because we were camping. So maybe if we had not been so cheap and had a hotel, but that would have just been a different experience. I really liked camping.
Camping was part of the experience. Yeah. So that's part of what we wanted to do. The only negative of camping was our charging situation.
Yeah, that's true.
There wasn't an outlet at the campsite, which is pretty surprising considering all the other amenities that they had, that there wasn't somewhere you could, like,
I mean, it's not surprising because we were camping, but it is because the campsite had, like, a laundry machine and,
had, like, everything else.
Multiple bathrooms and spigots and anyway.
Yeah, so we had a bit of an issue with managing our electronics.
Yeah, but it was fine. I mean, we had little battery banks that we brought with us that worked okay. So
yeah, but it was really fun just getting to camp in the woods and hang out with like a campfire and just have like slow, relaxing mornings and evenings. And all we had to do was really ride our bikes. And
it was probably the most old school bathhouse I've been to so far.
Oh yeah,
like it wasn't
bathhouse.
Not in like a traditional sense. Like it wasn't like, wow, look at how, I don't know, like nice and traditional it is. It was more like old school. Like you paid some lady it felt like her house. I mean, you just paid them.
Yeah, there was like a lady sitting behind this like glass thing smoking a cigarette, and you would hand her 600 yen
for the two of us. And then you go in and kind of like a YMCA style like locker room, but then there was no soap or like anything, and there were only pit toilets, which is all fine.
Not pit toilets, but squat
toilets. Yeah. Sorry.
They had plumbing.
Yeah. Sorry. But
it wasn't that old.
No. But then like I don't know what the guy's shower room was like, but in our bath, like the actual bathroom, the showers were pretty rough. Like you would turn the hot water on and a little bit of cold, and then it would just blast like boiling water out. So you're like, oh my gosh, and you'd turn the hot water down and then it would be freezing.
Yeah.
So it was like a little rough.
Yeah.
But it was fine, and it felt very just hometown because the bath was actually pretty popular. There was a mom with a baby in the bath, and then there were two teenage girls that were like so chatty. Like they were like talking, laughing the whole time with each other. It was very like casual.
Yeah, it was super nice. Yeah. It was a very fun experience because that is what I imagine, like, just a super traditional.
Like rural town.
Yeah, rural town bath.
I mean, I don't think traditional, because when I see traditional in, like, marketing material, it's like, wow, come look at this renovated bath.
Well,
it's like
yeah, but that's like
the Edo period
bougie
style.
Traditional.
Yeah, true. This was like non-bougie traditional.
Yeah, that's like where, the samurai were going. We were in the one that, like, the farmers were...
Yeah.
We were in the farmer's bathhouse.
The regular townsfolk bathhouse.
Yeah, but it was super fun.
Yeah.
It was a nice experience.
It was.
Yeah. Overall, it was just a really good... I'm glad we went to Wakayama, especially considering, I think, on the west coast of Japan, where we were originally going to go, it was kind of like rainy and windy and cold. Whereas in Wakayama, it was actually sunny, still cold,
Yeah.
but sunny.
It got warm like at noon and stuff.
Yeah,
It was
when the
cold
sun
at
came
night.
out, you warmed up so much. But yeah, I think it was a good weekend.
It was a great weekend. Very glad. Very, very nice of you to plan. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you have any words of the week?
I do. So my word of the week is Mikan.
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 Looking at trees.
No, it does have to do with looking. It kind of means like unseen or remote. Kind of like, I guess, scenery that is not often seen. So yeah, kind of like where we were was very, I guess.
Is it a
Mikan.
noun or an adjective?
I think you can use it in a lot of different ways.
Huh.
Let me pull up my phone real quick. I had it saved on my,
Because
it has like a lot of you can use it as an adjective to mean unknown, unacquainted, unfamiliar, sequestered, secluded, hidden, and withdrawn.
Oh, okay.
Which sometimes it's hard to know, like, in context when you would use this for which of those.
Yeah.
Because you might attach it to like a different noun. Like, I don't know if you would call a person Mikan.
Yeah.
Or if you would call.
Probably not.
Like an area Mikan. But yeah, that's my word. And the main translation that Google gives you is unseen. So yeah, we were just, really out there.
Out there.
We were just in the Japan that foreigners never get to see.
Zeb's obviously tongue-in-cheek there.
Yeah,
Maybe not
just
obviously.
kidding.
Your dry humor is just very dry today.
It's natural.
The listener knows by now, hopefully.
Maybe.
But
They're like, man, this guy's...
he's something.
I hate this guy.
Anyway, my word is seitai moho, which is...
That's like 5 words.
It's one word. Or maybe it's 2. It's one word in English, but seitai moho, it's 4 kanji. It's biomimicry, which seitai is like a living thing, and moho is imitation. So, yeah, maybe it's 2 words, I guess, in Japanese, but there's no spaces in Japanese, so you can string anything you want together.
Yeah, when I originally looked up a word for like unseen, it gave me like a sentence.
Oh.
And I was like, that's not what I want.
Seitai moho, biomimicry. I was thinking of this because when we were eating breakfast while we were camping, one of the days we had yogurt, and we opened the yogurt lids.
One of the days we had foraged for a little bit of yogurt.
One of the days we went all the way to the convenience store and scavenged up
protein at the Daily Yamazaki.
We bought some yogurt, and
that poor lady saw us 3 times in one day. And anyway,
so when I opened the yogurt, I was expecting to like lick the yogurt off the lid, and it just like fell off the lid in little beads. And yeah, Zeb has seen this before, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's like the lotus leaf." I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
It's common knowledge, I thought,
apparently,
here in Japan.
Apparently, in Japan, maybe in other countries that I am not familiar with, the lid wrappers have this lotus leaf biomimicry design on the underside of them to repel liquids, and it imitates the way the little bumps on lotus leaves allow water to bead and just shed off instead of pool. And
in America, you just gotta lick the lid because our yogurt just sticks.
Just heathens out there. We just gotta like lick the lid like medieval times or something.
Yeah, medieval yogurt. So the only reason I knew this is because for some reason in high school curriculum, one of the lessons in a textbook we use is about biomimicry.
Which is a pretty intense English word.
Yeah, I know. It's a pretty intense subject for some of my students. But it's about biomimicry, and so many of the students talked about the lotus leaf yogurt lid.
It's brilliant.
And so that's the only reason I knew, because I've been listening to kids talk about the lotus leaf. So I was like, what is going on in here? And then we saw it in action.
Well, I was so pleased, because you know how sometimes on the lid of American yogurts, when you peel it off, it's like kind of crusty yogurt, or like it's not like the right yogurt consistency because it's gotten on the lid. Anyway.
That lid yogurt.
Yeah, the lid yogurt is subpar, and I didn't have to deal with it. Just beat it right off.
Yeah. Impressive.
So, anyway, that wraps us up with
we're done here.
Some random lid yogurt topics. But yeah, thanks for listening this week to our rambling about our trip to Wakayama and crows and yogurt and biking and gravel.
Yeah, so if you've ever done the Kumano Kodo, send us an email and let us know if we should do it, because maybe one day we will. Maybe. Or if you've ever been camping in Japan, or if you have any questions about any of the topics we've covered, get in touch.
ramblingramsbothams@gmail.com. And
you can use the submission contact form at
ramblingramsbothams.com.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.